Don,
Yes.
congratulations on the 80th anniversary of the Blue Note.
Thank you very much.
And what does it mean to celebrate 80 years of dominating the music industry?
Global domination. Well, you know, I've been a fan. I bought my first Blue Note record 52 years ago as a teenager, and in the 8 years that I've been working at the company, I've come to appreciate just what a huge accomplishment it is to stay in business. I think for the company to have endured for 80 years and to have so much of the music that was recorded still be relevant and to have it still move people, that's a testimony to the good taste and perseverance of my predecessors in the job, and they were certainly enlightened men. The guys who started it, Alfred Lyon, Francis Wolff, also Bruce Lundvall, who ran the company for 30 years, starting in the 80s. And of course all the incredible musicians who made those records that are just timeless, man. You put on Speak No Evil by Wayne Shorter today, that sounds as fresh and it's just utterly timeless. There's nothing about it that's nostalgic or it reminds me of my childhood. It's like he could have made that yesterday.
True. There's conversations going on though now, with especially with the recording industry, about some artists going independent and not having labels behind them, and how do you think that is affecting the industry?
My feeling is that I'm a musician and a record producer by trade, and I became a titan of the music business only fairly recently. So my feeling about it overall is, if you make great music that touches people, if you make it in a generous spirit, and you open yourself up as an artist and reach out to people and make music that enriches their lives and helps them understand a little bit about the craziness of our circumstances in life, and makes them feel good, that however you do the business doesn't matter. That's all secondary to making great music, and that's really what I keep my focus on. Whether it's an independent label or the Universal Music Group, or whether people buy CDs or download files or stream, that's all. I believe the money will follow for the artists and for the business people if you make great music. So I'm not that worried about
that.
I can give you the arguments. There are arguments in favor of being with a small independent company or putting your own records out. You can look at it and see, well, if I just give my songs to Spotify and Apple Music and Tidal and Amazon, most people in the world will be able to hear it. Well, what do I need a record company for? And you need a record company so that people know to look for your music. You don't just stumble into stuff. There's 100 million songs or something up on these services, so you need something to get people's attention so that they seek out your music. Now, there are also, so big record companies great for that. Blue Note, we're part of Capitol Records, we're part of the Universal Music Group. As artists become more popular, like Robert Glasper, Capitol Records staff starts to kick in, and the Universal Music Group starts to kick in around the world. And there's some muscle that can be applied to making sure that people know about your music. And so that's a big thing that a small independent company can't do. But there are other things coming. by signing with a record company that's owned by a publicly traded corporation, there are all these SEC Security and Exchange Commission rules and regulations that you have to adhere to. So everything's got to be done in accordance with the union. You have to pay the work dues and the pension and welfare for every recording session you do, which a little independent label doesn't have to do. So that means it'll cost more to make the record.
Sure.
You have to get every time you use a sample of something, you can't just hope that the person who made the sample, the person you sampled,
Never hears it.
yeah, you can do that if you're on a little independent label. And they probably won't go after you because the stakes are small. But you can't do that if you're with a publicly traded corporation. So that's a big headache getting all the clearances. So there are things like that it's kind of a trade-off, and maybe being with a bigger record company isn't for everybody. But I found certainly a lot of artists try to start their own record companies, and after a couple of records, they find that they're on the phone talking about.
They need some help.
Well, they're spending their time trying to make sure Amazon's got something displayed properly, as opposed to writing new songs.
Yeah, because I was going to talk about that, how the new technology now is actually affecting the music industry.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the way either the music is created, how it's marketed, and how it's sold as well. How new technology is forcing the artists and the industry to rethink.
Everybody's got to rethink, but I view it all as it's a neutral color on the palette. There have always been technological changes. Radio was a technological change, but you'll notice that throughout the history of recorded music, the thing that endures is great music.
At the end of the day.
Yeah, so I still say, even though you can make a record on your laptop, you can make a record on your phone. And people have done that. And you could make a really great record, or you can make a really shitty record. And if it's a great record, it doesn't matter whether you made it on your phone or whether you spent $100,000 in the best recording studio in the world. And conversely, if it's a terrible record, it doesn't matter where you did it either, or what the technology was.
Sure.
You either move people or you don't move people. So I really, it's not just sloganeering. I really believe that the focus should be on making great music. And you make a great song, people will find it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what colors you paint with. You
True.
could be Matisse, you could be Rembrandt. Their colors were quite different, but they were incredible, and they moved people to paintings.
What does it mean for Blue Note to have so many of your artists nominated for Grammys every time?
It's really nice to know that you're connected with people, that the music, I know that it moves me, or I'd question putting it out if I thought, no one's going to like this music, it's not honest, it's not good, but it's good to have some affirmation, definitely, that the music is working with
and
large
the
numbers of people.
acknowledgement.
Yeah, it's great.
And that's what it is.
Yeah.
The conversations about developing new audiences for jazz.
New audiences.
Yes, and obviously it means getting younger people on, because they'll carry on the legacy and the music. Is there a deliberate attempt from Blue Note, or even from artists from Blue Note, to do that?
Well, I'd like to believe that you build a new audience naturally. Like probably the best thing to happen to jazz in the last decade was Kendrick Lamar's "To Pimp a Butterfly," because several people on the boat, Terrace Martin, who was the producer and a jazz musician, brought in Robert Glasper, brought in Ambrose Akinmusiri, both Blue Note artists, brought in
Kendrick is
incredible,
is fabulous.
Yes. Brought in Kamasi Washington, who'll be on next year's Blue Note cruise, and he exposed a whole new audience to that kind of music, and it's definitely had a ripple effect and brought Glasper into a different conversation with new people. I think it's really important that younger musicians reflect the times that they live in and the music that they're exposed to. I don't know how you can be a young person today making music and not be influenced by hip hop. And so I believe that should creep into the musical vocabulary. If you have, it's just a conversation, right? It's just conversation, and you don't want to be quoting, you know, old dead people all the time. You know, you want to. If all I did when you asked me a question was say, well, as John Coltrane once said, that wouldn't be very interesting. You could just read up on Coltrane. You don't need me to tell you what John Coltrane said. So it's very important to have a vibrant, personal musical vocabulary.
So basically, with what you've been talking about, the future of jazz looks bright.
I'm very optimistic about the future of jazz. It won't sound like the jazz of 10 years ago, won't sound like the jazz of 40 years ago, won't sound like the jazz of 100 years ago. It'll sound like the moment. If you want to hear what jazz sounded like in 1964, we've got a fabulous catalog that's available to everybody. They can just listen free if they want to on one of the streaming services. And the thing that I found, the common trait of all the different eras of Blue Note records, is that no matter who was on the current roster, they were pushing the envelope of the music of their time.
Of the time. Just be brave to take a chance on anything.
That's it.
Absolutely. So, Don West, your own music.
Yes.
What are you working on anything? Are you doing anything? Or are you still, running the label?
Well, I've been trying to play more.
Okay.
I'm a bass player, and I've been touring with a guy named Bob Weir, who's one of the original Grateful Dead guys, right? And it's got a different groove to it than jazz. It's got a different swing. The groove is on a little different grid, and it's got elements of rock and roll, but it's really improvisational. We never play the same song the same way twice. And at the beginning of the set, I never know where it's going to go. Just got to listen and go with the flow. And I've really been enjoying that. And I think it really, in addition to being something that's fun and good for my soul to get out and play for 3 hours every night, I also think it really helps in running the record company too, because
I was going to ask that. How important is it, at least to be a musician or have run the mill of that experience to run a label, well?
I think it's critical. It doesn't necessarily have to be the president of the company, but someone at the company better have a fundamental understanding of what happens when you get together with a group of musicians and to have an understanding of that moment where the sum of the parts becomes less than the whole.
Yes.
And the whole just takes off, and it's a mystical and magical thing that I really can't explain, and I don't think any musician can explain what happens when everyone gets a group consciousness and the thing goes off to unexplored territory.
Got you.
And that's the business we're in. If you hang around the office all day, you might think we're in the business of negotiating contracts or doing accounting, all of which are necessary if you're running a company. But that's not the nature of the business. Those are ancillary things to keeping the doors open while you try to create that magic and make sure people hear it.
Thank you so much, Don.
Yeah, pleasure to chat.
Absolute great pleasure.